The subject tonight, as you've heard, is talking about Leeds, the city of collaboration, and it's a real pleasure to be here at one of the city's renowned universities to do so. You may be sitting here asking yourself, of course, why a lawyer is talking to you about the subject rather than perhaps something really exciting like, I don't know, maybe incorporated joint ventures or something. But when I was invited to speak here this evening, it's about 8 months ago now, I think, a number of things in which I was involved in my own business and elsewhere had caused me to think about the importance of collaboration and the positive impact effective collaboration could have in resolving issues within my own business and on a much wider stage at a city and indeed, perhaps even a regional level. To set the context, as well as being a partner at DLA Piper, I'm a non-executive director on the board of the Leeds Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust, and I'm a business representative on the Council's Economic Development Board. And there are reasons for telling you about those roles, and I think they'll become more apparent as I go through the talk. But starting with my own business, it might be helpful to have a little bit more background about DLA Piper. So DLA is a global business law firm. We did, however, start in Yorkshire about 200 years ago, and it was Leeds, by the way, not Sheffield, despite what Sir Nigel will now tell everybody. But in the last 25 years, we have morphed from what was a highly successful and very well respected Yorkshire law firm to the legal giant we are today, providing legal advice and support to global businesses in 27 jurisdictions across the world. Our Leeds office is our third largest office in the world. London and New York, of course, pip us to the post there, unsurprisingly. And Chicago is hot on our heels, I understand. But in Leeds, we employ over 500 people in the city centre. And like many other major professional service firms, we employ significant numbers of graduates every year, and we are hugely oversubscribed every year. So we don't have a problem getting young people into the firm and through the door, and we do, of course, expect people to move around during their careers. However, in recent years, we have noticed a rise in our attrition rates, and that means young lawyers leaving the Leeds office for opportunities elsewhere. And the biggest losses are those between 1 and 4 years qualified, and those people are typically, I know I'm speaking legal speak now, so they're typically between 25 and 29 years old. And what is noticeable about that is that we're not losing our lawyers predominantly to other local firms or even other northern firms, but instead, because of the nature of the work we specialise in, it's to cities such as London, Hong Kong, Dubai and Singapore, to name but a few, so other leading global cities. Sometimes they move outside the firm, and quite often also within it. But as you can imagine, when they move outside, that's more of a problem for us. We invest a lot of money in recruiting and training our young lawyers, and we want to retain that talent within our own business. And on the face of it, they tell us, we're doing all the right things. We provide great training, top quality work, exactly what you'd expect to get in London or New York, which is why they can go there, and fantastic office environment, and of course it goes without saying that the partners are fantastic. So the question for our legal team, or leadership team I should say on a serious note, was why are so many of our young lawyers in that case still looking further afield? And speaking to colleagues and friends and businesses right across the city, I came to understand that ours was not a particularly unusual situation. And at around the same time, excuse me, as we were discussing what actions we as a firm should take to retain our talent, I attended a presentation at the Sustainable Economy and Culture Board. That's really hard to say, by the way. So I'm going to call it the SECB from now on, by one of the economists of KPMG who had co-written KPMG's Magnet Cities report. By way of background, the SECB is one of the boards the Council established to deliver the City Priority Plan, which I'm sure you've all read cover to cover. And it's one of 5 strategic partnership boards which were established by the Council. The purpose is to provide strong and effective leadership and to support effective collaboration and work on the issues of sustainable economy, the culture, transport and environment. If you guys haven't heard of the Magnet Cities report and you're interested in looking at how a cross-section of declining cities from across the globe fought back and became positive magnets, I would thoroughly recommend it. I think I can honestly say it's one of the best reports I've read in my career. Now you're probably thinking that isn't really saying much because I'm a lawyer, so what I think is interesting is probably a long way from what other people think is interesting, but if you just bear with me, I think you'll probably agree that it's a pretty interesting read. It's a very illuminating report. Before I say anything further, this report focuses on how cities in decline pulled themselves around. Clearly, Leeds is not in that position. But like all other major cities, we're fighting a war for talent, and we absolutely need to make sure that we are match ready. The report is particularly relevant in the context of Leeds because 200 miles south we have the global city of London, which of course has a huge magnetic pull, not just from cities around the UK, but also from around the globe. One of the most important takeaways from the report is that the pull of global cities like London need not completely overwhelm second cities such as Leeds. I do realise, by the way, that Birmingham's bigger. Second cities applies to all of the regional cities. We simply need to have a plan and work together to execute it. So the questions the authors of the Magnet City report set out to answer were very simple actually. First of all, what can be done to help second cities like Leeds across the developed world improve their offer? Secondly, how can second cities increase their magnetic draw? And thirdly, is it possible to actually turn a negative magnet city into a positive magnet city? The research focused on developed cities around the world who were all at one time stuck in a seemingly intractable cycle of decline, but who took bold and sometimes really experimental decisions, which ultimately over a period, sometimes quite a long time, transformed them into positive magnets. Now, Leeds certainly does not fit into that category. But in recent years, we have seen huge investment in many parts of Leeds. And our retail offering has changed beyond all recognition, for example. And I think we're now more than ever deserving of the title of the Knightsbridge of the North. I think the arrival of the largest John Lewis outside London within the new Victoria Gate is something about which I, and I'm sure many other ladies in the audience, are extremely excited. And everywhere you look, there are new restaurants and bars all over the city. And I think it's fair to say that the opening of the Leeds Arena has brought a new buzz to the city at night. An entirely different cohort of people are now enjoying the city centre. And the delivery of the arena is a huge credit, I think, to the council and its partners. So there's a huge amount that is already great about Leeds. If you haven't worked it out so far, I am a big fan of this city. But the question is, are we maximising the opportunities for the city's economic development? And are there any lessons we could learn from the experience the cities focused on in the report? And specifically, I think, what they did to attract and retain talent to their cities. So although all of the cities in the report made extreme changes, not least because they found themselves in extreme circumstances and had little to lose by taking the risks they did, the principles they adopted to get themselves out of the mess they were in are unbelievably similar right across the board. What is absolutely clear is that in every case, the reinvention was as a result of effective collaboration between city leaders, businesses, universities, and residents, in combination with a lot of hard work and grit and determination. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking through some of the detail of the report. There's just not enough time to go through the whole thing. It's about 300 pages long, unless any of you really are particularly keen on doing so. I think because understanding what these cities did enables us to look at the lessons learned in the context of our own city. What all of these cities had in common, and at the heart of their reinvention, is that they became attractive to a specific type of young person. Highly motivated, well-educated and ambitious. Not only did they flock to the cities for existing jobs, but importantly, and this is the key point, they created new jobs, and that is absolutely key. And the suggestion is that if you attract young people who create new jobs, then your long-term economic growth is much more secure. It's clear that these turnaround cities also understood the need to refashion and sculpt their city into a place with a culture and vibe that the millennial generation, as we might characterise them now, specifically would be drawn to. So essentially, the report identified that there are 7 key characteristics applied across all of these magnet cities. Firstly, they attract young wealth creators. They undergo constant physical renewal. They all have a definable city identity. They're connected to other cities. They cultivate new ideas. They're fundraisers, and they have strong leaders. The suggestion in the report is that second cities around the world should have a look at these principles to assess the extent to which they need to rethink what their fundamental purpose is and the way in which they position themselves to compete. So let's just put a little bit more flesh on the bones of some of those characteristics I've just mentioned. So dealing first with attracting the young wealth creators. For the reasons I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, understanding how they attracted and retained talent was of particular importance and relevance to me as a business person in the city. What they say is that if your city becomes known as a hotbed for a particular group of people, it creates a buzz which can explode into the regional and sometimes national or global consciousness. Sometimes this happens organically, but it can be created as a result of the concerted efforts of the city leaders in collaboration with the business community. All of the case studies had this in common, all of them. All of them became attractive to a specific group of young, talented, energetic people, and while some of them came for existing jobs, others created those all-important new jobs, and it is those young people specifically who are referred to as wealth creators. It's a horrible term, isn't it? But that's what they call them. They create the jobs of tomorrow, and that strengthens the city's future economic potential. So why are those young wealth creators? Well, who are they? They're a pretty varied bunch, actually. High and low tech entrepreneurs, researchers, designers, engineers, biologists. I think you can get the picture from the type of people I'm talking about. But not all of them sit in the new economy. They include chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, accountants. Accountants. I was going to add in lawyers there as well. If accountants were in, I thought we should slip through that too. But anyway, the cities which create the biggest magnetic buzz are the ones who deliberately and successfully attract a specific cohort. But to attract those people, the city needs to look and feel right. So how would a city like Leeds, for example, which is already pretty successful in many respects, build on that success to become a magnet city? What investments would we make to attract a specific group of young wealth creators? Well, we thought a good starting point was to ask them. And the good news is that that is exactly what Leeds as a city is doing. Hearing KPMG's economists speak about how these failing cities had turned themselves around was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. If they could find a way to appeal to these elusive young wealth creators, then surely for a city as vibrant as Leeds, with so much potential, it would be much more easily attainable. I spoke to Chris Harold, who, as many of you will know, is a senior partner for KPMG in the North, and Nigel Foster, who is the chair of the SECB, about how we could engage with young people across the city and give them an opportunity to input into the council's future plans. And as a result of that, we established the Leeds Millennials Forum, we being DLA Piper, KPMG and Leeds City Council. The city's council CEO, Tom Reardon, who I know spoke here recently, got it straight away. He is a big fan of this. And Judith Blake, the leader of the council, has been incredibly supportive of the initiative. The forum's membership is extremely varied in terms of sectors. It includes representatives from many of the city's major businesses, all the universities, the hospital, the council, banks, the arts, including Opera North, the Playhouse, the Northern Ballet, the sporting community, and of course the third sector as well. So if your organisation isn't represented, and please do speak to me afterwards and I'll put you in touch with the chair of the Millennials Forum, it's Jen Keogh. The only membership requirement is that you must be between the age of 20 and 34. So obviously I just missed that bracket by a smidgen. So what are we asking those millennials to do? We're asking for their input on the future economic development of the city. What we as a city need to do to attract that generation. The forum is now represented on the SECB and is expected to put forward a number of strategic objectives to the board. I think this is a great example of the city's leadership working in collaboration with the business community and our young people to determine what it is that we need to do to become and remain relevant to the wealth creators of today and those of the future. From the first few meetings of the forum, it's absolutely clear that the area of most importance is transport, inter and intra-city transport. I'm sure that many of you are aware that Leeds is the largest city in Europe without a rapid transport system. And it's not for the want of trying. The council has been relentless in its pursuit of this objective for more than 20 years. As we speak, we are awaiting the outcome of the Transport and Works Act order to determine whether or not the much lauded NGT scheme will become a reality. And if we aren't successful this time around, then we shall simply have to try again. And that really is try again. They are an absolute necessity if you are to attract people and investment to our city. You'll recall that I said that all the magnet cities in the report are connected to other cities. Well, in addition to intra-city transport, we absolutely must improve, and of course you'll no doubtless be aware of the much talked plans about for HS3, which will significantly improve journey times across the Northern Corridor. So in order for the Northern Powerhouse, that other much talked about idea, to move from concept to reality, I think that's an absolute essential. The concept of the Northern Powerhouse is extremely compelling, and for future generations it's a prize we as Northerners cannot afford to lose. As the largest city in the north of England, Leeds must play a vital role in turning that concept into reality, and I firmly believe that we can. Tom Reardon spoke very eloquently as a guest speaker here before Christmas about the case for devolution, and as we now know, we do not yet have a deal for Leeds. I won't comment on what the configuration of the deal should be, because I don't want to get myself in political hot water. But I think it is absolutely fair to say that there has been really effective leadership and collaboration on behalf of the leaders of all of the councils within what is characterised as the Leeds City region. Strong leadership is of course essential to the development of a magnet city, because by virtue of the fact you're going to have to undergo some significant change, you aren't going to make everyone happy. You'll inevitably need to take some pretty big risks. So at around the same time as establishing the Millennials in Leeds, who by the way are now inputting into the transport strategy, the culture strategy and the European Capital of Culture bid, how is that for cross-sector, cross-city collaboration? The board of Leeds Teaching Hospital, on which I also sit, has started to look at the reconfiguration of the LGI site. David's smiling at me because he's been involved in many discussions with that. It always amazes me, now that I'm on the board and therefore in the know, how few people realise that the Leeds Teaching Hospital's NHS Trust is the largest teaching hospital in Europe, employing around 16,000 employees in the city. We have 104 specialisms and are NHS England's biggest customer. We're a magnet for talented young doctors and other healthcare professionals. In collaboration with the University of Leeds, we conduct world-class research, and we are at the cutting edge of medical advances. I'm sure many of you saw Professor Simon Kay on television after he performed the world's first hand transplant. The health economy in Leeds employs over 57,000 people, and we work very closely with our partners across that health economy to deliver the highest quality of patient care. Our staff take the concept of going the extra mile to an entirely new level, coughing now, and it's an organisation of which our entire city should be extremely proud. So anyway, that's the lecture on that bit over. Back to the estate. As most of you know, the LGI is just across the road. It's bordered, and I might have got my north, south, east and west wrong here, I think to the west by the University of Leeds, to the east by the Civic Quarter and by Beckett. Many of our buildings are no longer appropriate for modern healthcare provision, so we started to look at how we could reconfigure the estate in order to get some of the new facilities we needed, like an ambulatory care centre, and some significant improvements to our children's hospital, known locally as the Clarendon Wing. I think another very badly known fact about Leeds Teaching Hospital is that our children's hospital is enormous. It's almost the size of Great Ormond Street. We did have a master plan of the site drawn up, which looked at some reconfiguration and new uses for some of the redundant facilities, and it became really clear that it made sense to engage with the council and the neighbouring universities in relation to the scheme, your very good selves included. Given the location of our site and the opportunities a redevelopment had potential to offer more widely to the city, it was obvious that the leaders of the relevant organisations needed to collaborate, and we are. It's an incredibly exciting opportunity and everyone is working together. One of the original master plan proposals was to locate a significant block of new build student accommodation on the site of our old nurses' home, which is the red brick Victorian building, which most of you will be familiar with, very near our multi-storey car park. That of course means that the exodus of students from Headley continues, and that in itself offers a major opportunity for the city to reinvent itself. You'll recall what I said about the 7 key characteristics which apply across all magnet cities, one of them being that they undergo constant physical renewal. One of the key areas which all of the cities in the report looked at was the extent to which the nature and location of their housing stock would attract the young wealth creators to the city. We already have some outstanding city centre accommodation, predominantly apartment-based, but Headingley, as an example, represents a good alternative. It's very close to the city centre. It already has a very varied housing stock, parks, bars and restaurants. As the students move into the city centre, there is an opportunity to redefine an area like Headingley as a fantastic alternative for those young people who want to live within walking distance of the city centre in a very vibrant area. What I want you to imagine as we rebrand Headingley, in my mind of course, is the new Notting Hill of the North. I can envisage many of the older listed buildings being reclaimed for residential use, more new bars and restaurants springing up, and many of the new residents, these young wealth creators, using public transport, walking or cycling to work. Very European, and something which very few other northern cities can offer, pushing us another step ahead of the competition. What an exciting prospect. It's also intended that the NGT scheme will run through Headingley, which again ticks all the boxes for the transport connectivity that the millennial generation sees as something which should be business as usual. So as you can see, by getting all the senior leadership from the NHS Trust and the universities and the council in the room, we were able to look at a much wider picture, correctly configured and working in consultation and collaboration with our partners, and the decisions that we make together about what happens to the LGI site, and it's just one example of what we could all achieve, could have a lasting positive impact on the city, which will go far beyond what could ever have been achieved if we had simply looked at the immediate accommodation requirements of the NHS. Both the teaching hospital and the universities have a potentially important role to play in supporting innovation in the city centre. Given the research and teaching that is conducted in both, there is undoubtedly an opportunity for knowledge spillovers to be generated that will benefit local businesses. If you look at the Centre for Cities report on supporting the growth of Leeds City Centre, you will see that it mentions that work has been undertaken by the Brookings Institute to look at the role that such institutions are playing in cities in America, identifying them as anchors in what they call innovation districts. These districts result from information and ideas being able to be exchanged more easily as a result of the proximity of different businesses and research institutions. This is something which we are looking at very, very closely for Leeds, and it may be that the young wealth creators that we decide as a city we wish to attract are focused on this area. So collaboration and strong leadership really does make a difference, and it is happening in Leeds across a number of fronts right now. Those are the only ones that I had immediate experience of. My own experience the last 8 months tells me that when businesses and the public sector collaborate effectively, and you get all the right people in the room, we can make enormous differences to the outcome. And by continuing to strengthen the collaboration that already exists across the city, I have no doubt that Leeds will become the best city in the UK, just as the council envisaged it would. After all, we already have the Knightsbridge of the North. If I have my way, we'll also have the Notting Hill. And now you're really going to have to bear with me on this one. And setting aside Chelsea's performance this season, if Leeds United could just get back to their former glory, we could have something akin to a Chelsea on our hands as well. And on that note of aspiration, I'll take any questions you have. Unless you ought, I know that I'm the only thing now standing to you in a pint, so between you and a pint, so I'm quite